And so we get to start up the Topic Tuesday stream. I am joined again with Abby. Abby, do you want to say hi?
Hello.
So, this Topic Tuesday...
Accents. I'm bad at them. I keep doing them. I'm sorry.
This is what you get whenever you have, You weren't in band. What were you in?
I was in choir.
Choir. This is what happens whenever you get a choir geek that took a lot of Fringe. I'm sorry in advance.
So am I.
Hey, Gray. So, this week's stream is going to be a little heavy. We are going to be talking about queer history, why it's important that we remember it, and why we make sure that it doesn't get co-opted, especially by, like, institutions, by corporations, etc. We actually remember it for what it was. And in addition to that, why we shouldn't let it be whitewashed. Because anyone who is honest about history and goes back and looks at queer history, most of the front runners were people of color that didn't have much to lose because they had already had so much taken from them, and they were like, you know what? I'm gonna live happily and authentically. Screw you guys.
We do kind of know the irony of two extremely white motherfuckers excuse me, I'm sorry. Two extremely white people here having this conversation. But...
I love you. This is wholesome. This is great.
I'm trying not to swear. I did so well last week.
Right. But yeah, I think the important thing is I got so much stuff on my skirt. Sorry.
That's important.
Right? I've had kittens all over me.
They're so snuggly.
They are. I think the important thing to remember, though, is that we're not trying to speak for any people of color here. We're not trying to speak for any other minority group. We're just talking about why it's important that they don't get overlooked in the history of queerness, especially since they kind of set the groundwork for a lot. Like, oh shoot, you just told me her name. I'm constantly forgetting it. You forgot it too.
Oh, sorry, I got confused for a second. Martha P. Johnson.
Yes, thank you.
There was somebody else who I was thinking of, but that was a different person.
That's okay. But yeah, Martha P. Johnson, who threw the first brick. And there are a lot of people that try to overlook that, try to brush it under the rug, or try to downplay it.
In fact, in the movie that got made like relatively recently about Stonewall, they changed the person who threw the first brick into a cisgender white gay guy.
Of course. Right? But, yeah, fun times. So, Abby, where do you think we should start? I was thinking about just talking about some of the cool points in queer history and why we need to remember them.
I think so. Can I read the thing that I was looking for?
Oh, absolutely, please.
Because I only found out about this person, like, a couple weeks ago, and this is, like, a super cool thing that I super did not know. But,
So, after he's read this, we will actually post it to the server, that way everyone else can also follow this rabbit hole.
Yeah. And I'm going to be, like, reading the post about it, like, these are not my own words. Imagine being a black gay drag queen in the 1800s after being born into enslavement and having the style and cachet to throw soirees that the girls had to come to. That's why I don't want to hear this We're Not Our Ancestors stuff. You're right. From the Very Black Project page, William Dorsey Swann was a gay liberation activist. Born into slavery in 1858, he was the first person in the United States to lead a queer resistance group and the first person known to self-identify as a queen of drag. He was a slave in Hancock, Maryland, and was freed by the Union soldiers after the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect. During the 1880s and 1890s, he organized a series of balls in Washington, D.C. He called himself the Queen of Drag. Most of the attendees in his gatherings were men who were former slaves, who were gathering to dance in satin and silk dresses. William was arrested in public police raids numerous times, including the first documented case of arrests for a female impersonation in the United States on April 12, 1888. That's a lot of eights. In 1896, he was falsely convicted and sentenced to 10 months in jail for keeping a disorderly house, which is a polite way to say running a brothel. After his sentencing, he requested a pardon from President Grover Cleveland. The request was denied, but he was the first American on record to pursue legal and political action to defend the LGBTQ community's right to gather. He was known to have been close with Pierce Lafayette and Felix Hall, two men who were in the first recorded same-sex relationship amongst enslaved Americans. When William stopped organizing and participating in drag events, his brother continued to make costumes for the community. Two of his brothers had also been active participants in the drag balls. Imagine how intelligent and ambitious this man had to be to come up with drag balls in the 1800s. Imagine how many terrible concepts he had to unlearn by himself to be a confident gay black man who does drag in the 1800s. Imagine how courageous he had to be to fight for LGBT people as a former slave in America in the 1800s. William Dorsey Swann, the original drag queen, the original drag mother, the original activist. Tell a story.
Right?
And there's a bunch of pictures of him that I will be definitely posting in the server because they're cool. And he looks great. He's got a fruit hat. It's amazing.
That's awesome. But yeah, I can't even begin to imagine the level of strength, courage, and intelligence it would take to not only go through everything he went through growing up, but then to come out of that still wanting to help others, still wanting to love others, and wanting to protect. Like, as a survivor of various trauma, that's hard. Like, that is a lifelong challenge, trying to overcome the urge to be cruel and trying to help others, because PTSD does a lot to you.
PTSD is one of those things where it convinces you that everyone is out to get you, and it's not great. Mm-hmm. She has it a lot worse than I've ever had to deal with it, and I still had, like, a few phases in high school where it was like, everybody hates me.
Yeah. We don't compare levels of trauma. We're all valid. But yeah, that's freaking awesome. No one talks about that. And of course, if you were to bring this up in class, you'd have to discuss stuff like disorderly house laws, how they can and have been historically abused. Things like impersonating a woman. I mean, come on, I'd be arrested on the spot. Which sucks.
I think technically at some point I probably would be too, because I've been medically transitioning for 2 years and I'm still not out at work.
I love you so much.
The problem is, with the mask, they can't see my cool fuzz and my beard. And that's sad.
Yeah.
I didn't have to shave it to wear the mask properly, which sucks. It makes me sad. Yes, be gay, do crimes, always.
Always.
Partly because being gay was a crime for a long time, and in some states, still technically is. Yay, that's a problem. There's a thing acting up.
Maybe. Hey, chat peeps, are y'all having any weird audio distortions? It's okay to lurk, Ophi. We love you. We're happy to have you.
Just glad people are here.
Even if just one person is here and gets to see this, all worth it. At the end of the day, we just want to help people. And hell, going through this and having to re-examine our own biases as a couple as, to quote Abby, white motherfuckers. That's worth it. I say as someone who used to be a Nazi. You're never too young to think about others and to come to terms with the fact that you can do better and that it's worthwhile. It is worth it. I've met some amazing people that I would not have met if I had stayed in that mindset, and look at me now. I've become the very thing I swore to destroy. Crap, I'm even a socialist.
My family did and still does have a joke because my mom was raised in the aftermath of McCarthyism and in the literal Cold War. She was born in 1960. But we used to have this joke at my house where if you didn't like something that like everybody else liked, you were a communist. Like that was the joke.
Darn commie.
It was like, hey, do you want mustard? Oh no, I hate mustard. What are you, a commie? And like it was always like in good fun. No, there wasn't like any like oh, communism is really evil. But like there was that kind of undercurrent of like the fact that communism was the boogeyman enough that like it could be turned into that joke, and like a lot of people would get why it would be bad to be accused of being a communist.
Right. So using that as kind of a segue, because again, these Topic Tuesdays are completely unscripted. How different do you think your mom would be today with regards to how she thinks about, let's focus on transgenderedness, because that's what you and I are, that's what your mom has been kind of about recently. How different do you think she would be today if there had been a lot better LGBT education whenever she was in school?
I honestly, she would have probably been like a lot more chill about a lot more things, because like one of my mom's biggest problems, because she does have a lot of narcissism in her, is that she can't deal with differences very well. She can't deal with others having different experiences or different thoughts and ideas than her. And I think if she'd gotten at least some education on, like, in that vein of, hey, people have different thoughts and discussions and stuff and ideas, I think, like, maybe as a child she could have been able to be like, oh, okay, and incorporate some of that. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh, she'd be totally better, she'd be a great parent. She'd probably still be kind of in it, but she might be better. And that's what I operate on, is better or worse, and things that make you better are good.
I agree.
Doesn't have to make you perfect, just a little bit better than you did yesterday.
And that's the thing, each of us are worth growth. So personally, I grew up in a stupid little cult in a crazy little town where everyone believed basically the same thing, so we weren't really even seen as all that crazy until the cops got involved. And I remember in school I was taught some pretty gross things. And these things weren't taught outright, but they were taught through the way they were implied, through the way people were treated, through what people were allowed to get away with. I was taught things like LGBT people are bad, that it's all a mental disorder, that these people cannot have happy lives, they cannot have successful lives, and a whole myriad of other things. And so, growing up, having the thoughts that I did as a kid, I didn't know about transgenderedness, I didn't know about any of the rest of the LGBT community, I didn't know about any of this other stuff. And so I grew up thinking, what is wrong with me? Why do I have these thoughts? How come whenever I talk to other people about them, I get looked at like I'm disgusting and gross and abhorrent, whenever I'm not?
You're a normal person. You're just a little, like, you got a couple extra steps in there.
Right, exactly. It's important with LGBT education that we don't treat it as the secondary thing that has to be learned. It's not. It's not, oh, let's have this entire class on just the LGBT.
It should really be part of our sex education and health education already.
Exactly.
We should cover queer history in regular history.
Exactly.
Like, when we're talking about certain eras, putting in stories of queer history from those eras would do wonders in normalization and like making other people realize that we've always been here, we've always been queer.
We're here, we're queer, we ain't going anywhere.
And they need to get used to it.
They do.
Finally. That's been the like motto for decades upon decades, is we're here, we're queer, get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they need to start actually getting used to it.
Exactly. And yeah, I think it's important that we normalize it. We don't separate it and try and distance it and make it become, say, an elective. Because that's the way they started treating it at my school. My nephew went there recently, the school that I went to whenever I was a little kid. He attended that school, and they decided, oh, let's be more inclusive of LGBT people. So they had an elective class where you could go to learn about LGBT people. And God, was that humiliating. Yeah, I didn't hear anything good about that class. I didn't hear anything good about any of this other stuff. Now, that isn't to say that there's anything wrong with taking a focused and active learning course on something. That is good. That is fine.
But if it's the only interaction you ever have with that subject, something has gone wrong.
Right? And if it's othered, then it becomes something very, very bad.
It's like, it doesn't even have to be like humanities type stuff to like be a not great idea. Because like, what if you were in your science and you never touched on anything chemistry, never talked about chemicals at all, never talked about reactions, and only in your high school did you have that elective to take chemistry? You'd have no idea what was going on in that class. It would make no sense, and the rest of the science would make sense either, because chemistry is baked into the rest of science. And queer history is baked into the rest of history. And by omitting it entirely, it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. We have had to take steps to remediate certain things. For instance, we have Black History Month because even though Black history is simply a part of history, it's been erased.
Reminded. People need to be bonked over the head with the remember the history stick.
Right, and there have been active efforts by the West, by a whole bunch of different groups, to actively erase the history of people of color. Both those that have come to Europe, USA, etc., completely against their will, such as slaves and whatnot, as well as those that are living right now in Africa, Middle East, etc. On top of that, even though, like, they're literally our neighbors, and you'd think that we'd understand more about them, there's never a vested interest to really learn anything about people from South America, from people from the, from the Pacific Islanders, from any of these other groups. Like, I didn't learn anything about any of these people until I, as someone who wanted to become a history professor, started taking elective classes and took a college course on, specifically, non-white history.
There was a thing of, like, in my history class, we talked upon, like, a bit of mythology and how it related to history, because, like, you know, that's a very important thing. And we did touch a little bit on Mexican mythology and history, except they did it so bad, guys. They did it so bad. They said, like, Quetzalcoatl was a god of evil or something like that, and he's not. He's a happy snake dude. He's a chill dude. He's a patron of the arts.
Right. But yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions. Everything has to be warped and forced into this worldview of good, evil. People will go out of their way to fit every mythology into, oh, here's a head god, which is God, and then here's another god, and we're going to force that into the basic shape of Satan, and then we're going to manipulate and force everything to become synonymous with Judeo-Christian genericness. No offense.
No, I'm fully aware that, like, the people who supposedly share my faith are, in a large part, just terrible at it. Because, like, I say supposedly, I don't think that people who are idiots and are Christian are non-Christians. I think they're just doing Christianity badly. Very, very badly. It's like, y'all, Jesus was a brown socialist, guys. He was executed by the state.
He wasn't white.
Yeah. There's like, someone joked, there was a comedian I'd read.
Oh, baby.
Buddy. Oh, there goes our boy.
Oh,
Come here. Come here, buddy. Oh, this is our big chunky boy.
you can't get up on the desk. We know you want to be loved just like the other baby.
He's a giant boy.
He really is.
What was I saying?
You were talking about how Jesus is definitely not a white conservative capitalist who thinks everyone should pull themselves up by the bootstraps.
Right. There's a comedian I was watching, that's what I was segueing into, who was joking, like, if Jesus had been born white in the Middle East in that time period, that would have been the miracle.
Yeah.
They'd have been like, virgin birth. No, what the fuck happened to all your melanin? Sorry.
You're okay. I love you.
I love you too. I am trying so hard not to swear, but it's sometimes like, I used to not swear at all until like I left high school, and I got used to swearing like all the time. But
Because of me.
Yeah, now I have to put it back in the box.
I curse like a sailor. But yeah, there's a lot of history that gets forced into a super sterilized version so that it won't offend the sensibilities of the stereotypical cishet white person. And it's like Abby and I are talking about this heavy topic. We are not qualified to be talking about this topic. We are getting a lot of stuff completely wrong and just not doing it the justice it really needs. And I am fairly confident speaking for you on this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're both more than happy to educate ourselves if someone far more qualified steps up to us and is like, hey, you want to learn? Because I'm going to be like, heck yeah, let's do this. I got misconceptions, let's go. Oh,
like,
did I hit you, baby?
No, I don't think you did.
Okay.
You would have probably been like more grumpy about it. Like just you know, give me the sources, give me the books.
Right.
And tell me about your life story. Give me the books. Tell me about your life story. I will read and listen. Give me the books.
And that's an attitude that I think we need to focus on. On top of just trying to incorporate history back into history instead of turning it all into myth, because boy did I ever become disillusioned with history after trying to become a history teacher and realizing just how much of history is actually just myth about non-supernatural things.
Apocrypha.
Right? But something that I quickly learned was that there were basically two kinds of people I interacted with during that time period. There were people that were very eager to learn and to fix things. Very eager. And then there were other people that were like, well, this doesn't fit in with what I want to believe or what I've already been taught from my little hometown, rinky-dink town. So I'm going to keep forcing it back into this little paint-by-numbers rule set. And I think we need to work on getting rid of this weird idea, which, I'm going to be real, has been pushed by the alt-right, by people that want you to feel this way. And I am speaking here to other generic freaking white people like me, other wonderbreads out there. Because I am a piece of Wonder Bread. Do you see how freaking pale I am? God, I went outside the other day and I got a little bit of a sunburn.
It is also because she's maybe a little bit allergic to the sun, which doesn't help the vampire jokes.
I have a UV allergy.
I have a sun lamp that I take the bulb out when Bryn is in the house. Just in case.
Yeah, because those red welts are not fun.
No.
Anyway, there are people, and I used to do this back whenever I was a Nazi, and I'm not ever going to whitewash that. I'm not ever going to sterilize that and be like, well, alt-right. I wasn't really a Nazi, I was part of the alt-right, or, oh, I wasn't really a Nazi or part of the alt-right, it was just this neoconservative. It was Nazism. That's it. It was Nazism. It was stupid. I was stupid. I was afraid, and I turned to that as a way to feel more in control and more powerful. It was stupid. But people that are in those groups will push on this idea that you can't ask questions, that you can't misunderstand, that you can't all this other stuff, because if you do, everyone is going to jump down your throat. And they'll do stuff like, oh, you can't even get anything wrong because the ABCD, LGBT, whatever, alphabet mafia is going to come after you, and if you make even one slight error with a person at work, you're going to get thrown in jail for being transphobic or racist or blah, blah, blah. Like, no, you won't.
Meanwhile, at Bryn's work, some dude was just being ragingly, obviously transphobic.
Right.
And the only reason he got fired is because, like, he did something, like, illegal at some point. Like, actually, like, fully illegal.
Yeah.
And got canned. Not because he was making everybody, including Bryn and the other women, and basically everybody who was in a cis-het white dude, uncomfortable. But no, because he eventually became too much of a liability to keep
on. For legal reasons, I'm going to step in here and say that this is alleged. We are not saying anything official in regards to my employer or in regards to what has happened within that medical facility. If I do say something about that, that is something that I will say after speaking to a lawyer.
These are my personal opinions.
Hi, boss lady. Don't say her name. Don't say her name.
I don't remember her name.
Good.
Okay.
Hi, HR.
HR won't. I mean, if HR does find out that you, like, made these videos, are they gonna, like, actually care?
I don't know. We live in freaking Arkansas.
We've never name-dropped your place of employment on camera.
I know. Okay. But anyway. That isn't how it works in the real world. Okay. In the real world, with real people, what happens is you make a comment and they say, hey, that's not right, or hey, that makes me uncomfortable.
And then they fly off the handle about it.
Yeah. Don't fly off the handle. Like, literally, one of my best friends at work, the way she and I became best friends, is she made a transphobic comment towards me after I started transition. She didn't say it to be mean. She didn't say it to be rude. She said it because she honestly believed it. And I said, quite simply, that is not true, and I would appreciate if you don't say that. And her response was, oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was. Do you have some time later? Maybe we could talk. That is amazing. That is beautiful. That is...
Decent person alert.
And she learned, and I learned more about her. We became closer. We became more tight-knit. The morale increased greatly. Like, this is how it is. I have never had an interaction where I have inadvertently been sexist, racist, homophobic, or any other type of bigoted, where, so long as I didn't fly off the handle, I made it in good faith, and I was honestly willing to learn afterwards. I have never had that kind of interaction where someone flew down my freaking throat, tried to strangle me, get me canceled, canned, or whatever else you want to try and dog whistle about. That's never happened. I've only ever had people who are patient say, oh, let's talk about it, or people that don't have the patience, which no one has to educate you. That's not on them. That the responsibility is always on you to educate yourself. But even then, I've had non-patient people who weren't willing to take the time to help me educate myself, who were just like, nah, I mean, we're good, we're okay, but, like, that just wasn't okay. Like, and I was like, okay, I am sorry, that sucked, I will do what I can to learn and to educate myself. And that was that. It was, yeah.
Slight caveat, Twitter and Tumblr, like online spaces where you're semi-anonymous, are not like that. People will jump down your throat for the slightest misstep, but that is because they are anonymous Twitter and Tumblr users who thrive off of conflict and being a bunch of jerks, and will twist anything to be somehow screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Real life spaces, like, and say like Facebook and stuff, where you have to like have your face attached, are not like that, because like, one, people have to, their words follow them around.
Yeah.
So if they are acting like a harassing jerk, they're going to get caught.
Exactly.
So, like, if people have to like show their face and like connect their name to it and stuff, they are going to be like polite and nice about things, and actually will like educate you. And like, if they're anonymous and they're a bunch of, let's be honest, white teenagers pulling a white savior moment, that is like half of Twitter and half of Tumblr. Tumblr and Twitter both have the most stupid takes.
Yep.
I only know about these things because I'm chronically online.
And then, of course, you will always have those people that are trolls and are pretending to be someone totally different. For instance, I've recently been harassed by a woman who... Well, by a individual. I don't know if they're a woman, man, or something different. They approached me online, seeking advice and knowledge, wanting to ask me questions about being trans. They claimed that they were a trans woman, but it was only earlier this morning, whenever I was up way earlier than I should have been, talking to a freaking awesome person, that I came to terms and realized, after they started harassing me, they did not come in good faith, they did not come in honesty. They were pretending to want information. They were Michael, out from under the desk, please. I have a water bottle right here. Oh, never mind, he's moved. I need to get all my cords under my desk organized. I am afraid of any of the cats getting down there.
I accidentally nudged it the other day and turned off the screen.
Yeah. But anyway, this individual turns out that they have been pretending to be a trans woman, and they have been pretending to basically want all this info so that they could keep me occupied and steadily try and wear me down. They were asking super basic, in retrospect, they were asking super basic questions that had very obvious answers, and they were constantly trying to say and do things in a way that would be triggering and would tax my mental health.
There's a term for it. It's something like sealing or something, where you try to like get a bunch of people just to be like, oh, I'm totally asking this in good faith. I'm totally asking this in good faith, to just exhaust you.
Yeah. And that is a thing that people will do, is they will pretend to be of the oppressed group to try and refute anything that people don't want to believe about it. For instance, all these accounts that you saw online here recently with the Trumpster fire and everything, where it was people pretending to be people of color and saying things like Trump isn't racist, there is no systemic racism in America, etc., and so on. Whenever... Have you graduated high school? Do you have an IQ higher than a goldfish? Like, these cats, they don't get to... they don't get to. They don't have to have anything going on behind their ears. They don't have to work. They're allowed to be dumb. They're cute. I promise you no human on this planet is that cute. Sorry, not sorry.
You're not cute enough to outweigh that level of stupid. There was also actually, especially last 2016's election, it turned out there was a bunch of misinformation spread by literal Russian troll blogs, and Russian bots and stuff. And in this most recent election, there was a lot of anti-post office propaganda. My mother actually works for the post office, and she told me that she noticed their recruitment numbers are so down. They can't find enough people to work at the post office anymore. Like, they will hire 2 people and only one will show up to orientation. Or, they'll hire 4 people and only 2 will show up. Literally, half of the people they try to hire just screw off into nowhere.
Propaganda has a real effect.
And, guys, the post office is one of our most important resources. Like, it's a self-funded thing. It does amazing work.
It's kind of like the library. No one realizes how important it is for the community until it's gone. And then you realize if you are on the lower rungs of things, sneezy baby.
We're taking them to the vet tomorrow, don't worry.
Yeah, that we think they have a cold. They have not been feeling great. But we do have a vet appointment set up for tomorrow. It's gonna be okay, baby. But, yeah, whenever you're on the lower rungs of things, you realize how important these systems are. Like with the library, whenever I was super poor and everything, that was the only way I had access to internet, only way I had access to books, only way I had access to a meeting place socially. It was just, there was a lot that gave to me and my community. And it's the same for the post office. We kind of got off on a tangent.
Sorry. It provides a lot of jobs. The rates are very affordable. Support your post office, people.
Right.
The pay for people working at the post office is great. It is fantastic. That's I guess my last rant bit. It pays great. I used to work for them too. It pays great.
Sneezy baby. But yeah, propaganda is real, and it does have a very real effect on everyone who comes into contact with it. Even if you know it's false, you don't believe it at all, simply coming into contact with that propaganda does mentally tax you a little bit. And after getting exposed to it enough, you start to become a little apathetic towards it, or even worse,
start to believe it.
Well, not even that, but you start to believe maybe this is less. Example, in the USA, we don't have a left wing. What is, in other countries, considered to be left-leaning and progressive versus right-leaning and conservative. In America, we don't have that. We have far-right and hyper-conservative, and then we have regular right-wing conservative. The American left wing is basically the conservative of everywhere else, except for maybe the UK.
And the only people really in America who are left-wing are the private citizens. There's no political party representation.
No.
Even like third parties and stuff, like you'll be like, oh, the Libertarians or the Green Party. Those are pretty middle right too.
Yep.
Especially libertarianism. Those guys are crazy.
They really are. But yeah, it it will veer you. Over time, you'll start to see things and think, well, this isn't as bad. And it starts to skew things, and it starts to skew you slowly more and more to this side. And it sucks. It really does. And that happens with history a lot. If you go back and you start to study a lot of history and you go like really hard into what actually happened, you'll notice that the way people are reporting things, the way people are talking about things, it really is systemic erasure. It's not that most of the time, it's not that people are making a conceited effort to, oh, I'm not going to talk about this group or this thing. It's that because it has no effect on them, they don't talk about it, and so it gets forgotten.
And in fact, like, in recent, still living memory, especially relating to the queer history that we're talking about, twice, entire generations of queer people have been wiped out. World War II, like, got a lot of Europe's queer folk.
Yep.
And then the AIDS epidemic got a lot of both American and European queer folk.
Yep.
To such a degree that most queer kids nowadays don't know anybody above, like, 30 who's gay.
Yep.
Or trans or anything.
That's an interesting username. Mr. Unreal. I assume he, him are your pronouns. Oh, excuse me. Lung issues. This week's topic is about LGBT history, the importance of making sure it doesn't get erased or overlooked, making sure it doesn't get co-opted by, like, various corporations, groups, etc., and making sure that it doesn't get whitewashed, because people of color have been a super integral part of queer history and queer liberation.
And a couple diversions about the post office, because I have intense feelings about the post office.
We are very opinionated about our community resources. Even if they don't affect us as much as they do some others. But yeah, we've lost multiple generations of LGBT people and LGBT history because they've been wiped out. Like, during and after World War II. Exactly. We don't hear about it. But, for instance, something I learned while studying history, during World War II, a lot of LGBT people, especially gay men, were very heavily discriminated against. For instance, they were often sent to the front lines. A lot of them had to undergo chemical castration whenever they got back, or forced sterilization.
Including Turing, one of the smartest mechanical minds of recent history.
And it led him to an early grave. If we hadn't have forced him into that, where would we be now, technologically? This is a man, mind you, that was coming up with tests for AI.
During World War II. And he's the one who managed to figure out how to decode German ciphers so that, like, the Allied forces could actually figure out what the heck was going on.
Exactly. This isn't something simple. It is something that has been systemic. It is something that is possible to happen again. But yeah, whenever the AIDS epidemic hit, it wasn't that people were going out of their way most of the time to purposely be like, oh, I hate the LGBT, I'm going to go out of my way to hate and destroy them and ensure that none of this gets remembered. I'm going to go to every history, not history book author, but every group that creates the history books, every group that takes down what's going on, every newspaper, I'm going to rip out from their pages all the history, everything that references LGBT stuff. It wasn't like that. There were people definitely like that. They were very few and far between. Most people were just, they're LGBT, they're just a bunch of rapists. I don't gotta worry about them. The age isn't gonna get me.
There was, like, a huge disinformation campaigns amongst that time of, like, oh, only the gays get it. It's
and
a
also
punishment
painting,
from God.
and also painting the gays as pedophiles or rapists. But yeah, there is a danger to the status quo by people not being afraid and coming together as a community. There is a danger in that. I can believe it.
Yeah, that's definitely something.
I am far less dysphoric than a lot of other trans people. I don't mind my lower bits. I would definitely have preferred to have something entirely different. But everything else I am super dysphoric about. But I have come to terms with the fact that though I am living a much happier life now, though I am transitioning and everything is much greater, my mental health is a lot better, etc., if I had been forced to live as a guy, I could have done that. I would not have been as happy as I could have been. I would have had to struggle a lot with my depression, alcoholism, etc., that I no longer struggle with as much.
Now, when she drinks, it's more kind of a funny, goofy haha than like...
Oh God, the pain, please just let me not be able to feel this.
Yeah, it's more like, see how much I can drink, but then she forgets she's lost a lot of weight and is on Spiro, so can't drink as much as she used to.
Exactly. If I had lived back in the day, I probably would have done a lot of cross-dressing. It worries you that the suicide rates are so high for people that have... That is statistically incorrect.
The majority of people who commit suicide who are trans are the ones who are denied healthcare and are not allowed to transition.
Yeah. Part of the reason that the trans suicide rate is so high is, imagine you grow up with all of this dysphoria in a body that doesn't feel right, in a world that feels often wrong, where you are, where you see people that are like you being perceived as these gross individuals that are pervs or rapists or all this other stuff. And then you're denied your ability to live a happy life. You're told you're just going to have to suffer with it. And just all this other stuff compounding on top of each other. And then compare that to having a loving base that is like, no, I love you no matter what. You're going to be okay.
Yes, after people transition, they are in a better place.
They are.
The suicide rate of those who have transitioned or are in the later stages of transition are much, much lower. In fact, for me, this is a very personal experience. Not in the sense that it's deep in my heart, but no, it's just what happened to me. Is that I have struggled with anxiety and depression for my entire life, and starting from the age of 12. I was extremely suicidal. I didn't realize it at that time, but a lot of it was linked to my dysphoria. Not feeling connected to my body, because I just straight up felt like I shouldn't be in a body. I didn't realize why I didn't feel like that, why I felt so out of it. And then 2 years ago, or a little more than 2 years ago now, I started medical transition. I started taking testosterone, and while clearly it hasn't done too much yet, I've got some face hair that comes out. I've got a few different things, and my voice is obviously lowered. I unintentionally pitch it up a lot now, mostly for work, because I said it earlier in this video, but I'm not out at work, so I intentionally pitch it up. But since I began medical transition, I have not had a suicidal urge. I have not had a time where I thought, well, maybe I should just kill myself. Maybe that's the solution. I've not had any of that.
I do want to clarify something after what he said. HRT is not a magic drug. It's not really a drug in the more technical sense of what separates a drug from... Anyway, medical jargon, I'm not going to bore y'all with that. being on HRT, being allowed to pursue transition, will greatly help transgender individuals with their mental state because they get to be honest and true to themselves. That being said, being in an environment that is accepting, loving, and caring is just as important.
Oh, yeah, because the first few months I was on T, I was not in a great environment, didn't have very many good friends, and I was living with my mother, who I mentioned earlier, again, is a narcissist, and that was not fun, but that wasn't like I still wasn't suicidal, that was more just like, I hate being here in particular.
Right. Unreal, because I feel comfortable calling it. Unreal. We do have sources. So, just so you know, I am Bryn. This is Abby. I started the Tran community online. We are a online community, mostly cooperating and working together through Discord. We have a online community full of transgender individuals. So I get a lot of this info not only through anecdotal evidence from all of these trans people I work with, most of which are young adults, teenagers, and people that are in their early to mid-20s. But in addition to that, I do work medical, so I actually do have a lot of education in this area. And then further than that, on the Tran server, I have gone out of my way to find various resources for things like Trevor Project, World Health Organization, the United States, oh shoot, that's not what they're called. What is the USA's Psychology Association called? I forget. But yeah, then we have so many different like groups on there and so many little research stuff.
And I can always like scare up a source because you upload these to YouTube, right?
Oh yes, I leave the Topic Tuesdays on my Twitch for 1 week, and then whenever I do next week's Topic Tuesday, I upload last week's to my YouTube channel.
I can probably like pull up a reputable like a nice like simple link that we can put in the description or something.
But you can go and talk to any psychologist. I actually invite you to. I think everyone should have a psychologist or a therapist or someone to talk to, even if it's just... Thank you, the American Psychological Association. Sweet. Hi, Mandu. But yeah, I definitely encourage you to, if you don't believe these statistics, we will include some sources whenever I upload this to YouTube. But please, reach out to a doctor, a psychologist, a therapist. Talk to them about this. They'll back it up. But yeah, part of LGBT history and why it's so important, especially with us talking about suicide and me talking about my life growing up, I didn't know anything about LGBT people. What I knew was that they're pedophiles, rapists, deviants, which is stupid. That's completely untrue. Yeah, there are people in the LGBT community who are terrible freaking people.
But every community...
Every group has that.
They're terrible people.
But if I had known more about the LGBT community, then as a kid, I would have been able to say, oh, this sounds like me. And by saying that, I would have been able to get the mental help I needed. I wouldn't have had, or at least I hope I wouldn't have had, all the suicide attempts I went through. I wouldn't have put myself through the... I'm gonna have to call it sexual abuse that I put myself through, seeking validation from adults online, because at least they would call me a girl. I didn't have to put myself through all this other stuff because I would have been able, if this was taught in our schools and was something that was seen as mundane as it truly is, I would have been able to just grow up and be a regular freaking person, which honestly is kind of all I've wanted. I just want a house, a garden, and a library. I don't want to be a billionaire. I don't want... It's a simple life. And we really are mundane. There's nothing really special about us. I mean, I think the world of him, but like, we're just people. That's all we are. And we deserve to be part of this family that is the human race. And I don't want people growing up and hearing all the stupid stuff about LGBT people that I heard growing up in a weird conservative cult. I want them to grow up knowing, hey, I'm a part of a group. I have a label. I have people that are like me. I am not alone. And I can be happy. And that's one reason why I refuse to hide my transition. Why I refuse to do all this other stuff. Why whenever people harass me online by sending me pictures that they've pulled up from my social media of me with a beard, with me with all this other stuff, and they're like, ha ha, look at you, I can still see your stubble. Like, yeah, that makes me dysphoric as hell. Good on you. Are you okay? Do you need some help? Like, honestly, I think that frustrates them that every time they send me this, I immediately go mom mode, and I'm like, are you okay? Are you gonna be okay?
What's going wrong in your life? You're acting out.
But whenever they send me these pictures, I refuse to be ashamed of it. I want people to see me. I have been on estrogen for, like, what, 8 months?
Almost a year.
Yeah. The change is great. Like, if you've seen any of my before and after pictures, like, I look totally different. I've lost 100 pounds, near about. I was at about 300.
And with all affection, she was kind of a bulldog of a person. And I do literally mean that in an affectionate way.
You're okay, and I love you. But yeah, I've come a long way. I would never have believed this was possible. Because I didn't know anyone in my life besides Abby. It can. It's different for everyone. And it really is a individual to individual thing. I didn't put on weight because I actively exercise, and I've been watching my diet and a bunch of other stuff.
It turns out we really like vegetables. I'm just chunky because I have a screwed up metabolism and I like sweets.
Oh, baby.
Oh, buddy, you're trying to hack up a hairball on Mama's lap.
It's okay. Hack it up if you need to. I can wash the skirt. You're gonna be okay. But yeah, if I had known all this stuff, I would have had a different life. And I want people to see... I want people to see where I came from and where I am and where I'm going. I want someone to be able to see me and say, oh wow, I never thought I'd be able to do that. Now I know I can. Because if not for Abby, I would have killed myself. Literally, I saw him transition, and I saw how he used to be versus how he is now. And then I met a few other trans peeps. And I had to come to terms with the fact that I had been lying to myself. I had been spending my whole life telling myself, I won't have any effect if I start HRT. I'm still gonna look just as ugly. I won't be able to do this or that or anything else. But then I saw these people be like, nah, heck with that. I'm gonna be freaking beautiful, or I'm gonna be freaking handsome. And they were. And I had to stop lying to myself. I had to realize I can do this. It's not a question of if I can, it's a question of do I want to? And the answer was yes. I want to be happy. And I hope some other people are able to learn about LGBT history, are able to see themselves in the history books and realize there's nothing abnormal about them. There's nothing weird about them. There's nothing to be ashamed of. If you're queer, you're queer. Hopefully one day there won't even need to be a need to come out. There won't even need to be anything like that.
It could just be like, hey Mom, you know, I'm thinking I might be a girl.
Oh yeah? Okay, cool. Yo, do you want to go have lunch and talk about it in the park? Let's go have a picnic together.
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah, it'd be that.
Like, legit, one of my... I'm not going to name names, especially if any family's watching this. I recently had a young family member of mine approach me letting me know that she's a lesbian, and she's afraid because she saw how the family treated me after I came out as a teenager as non-straight, and then now that I've started transition, the way I may be disowned for a third time. And she's afraid of going through that. She's afraid of being put through that situation. And she's afraid that she won't be able to make it because she's a lot more attached to the family than I am. She shouldn't have to be that afraid. She's a child. Okay? She has a crush on a girl. So what? It's just a girl. They're just kids. Like...
It's literally no different than if it was a crush on a boy. And it should be treated that way. Because it is just... Oh, I like this person. Because they're interesting. Because something about them draws me in. It's the same as every other kid's, like, crushes. It just happens to be on somebody who's the same gender or whatever.
And it might just be a phase. So what? There's a phase where I wanted to become a cop. Like, everyone has their weird phases. And if I ever have a kid...
I was an emo in high school.
It was great. But yeah, if I ever have a kid, they come to me, they say, hey, Mom, I'm experiencing, I think I might be gay, or oh, I think I might be trans, or oh, I think I want to wear this kind of clothing. It's like, okay, as long as it's not endangering your health, go for it, kid, express yourself. So what if it's a phase? Like, oh no, my little boy decided to start wearing dresses and using she, her pronouns and stuff like that, and then was like, oh, it turns out I'm not a girl. I just like skirts and stuff. Sweet. My child understands themselves a lot better. Like, that's awesome. That's great. That's cool.
We are in a kind of relationship. I'm Ace, so it's a very intense platonic friendship.
Yeah.
Kind of like a platonic life partners thing.
Yeah. But he is definitely my life partner. I ain't going anywhere. We just bought a house.
Say just as it wasn't almost 2 years ago.
Yeah. We have talked about adoption. There are some individuals that we know who are currently very young who, if things don't get better for, we may pursue adoption because they are in abusive situations. But as it is currently, I am not going to pursue adoption at an adoption agency or anything because I don't have the financial ability or stability to take care of a child. And if I'm going to have a child in my care, they are going to get the absolute best that I can possibly give them, period. Hopefully my Twitch and YouTube takes off and I'm able to do a lot better. You can support me on Patreon.
You get cool swag.
You get cool swag. We got mugs. I may actually just create an online store. We'll see.
I actually have been thinking that would be really cool.
Yes.
Definitely have to... Who was the one who...
Otter.
Otter, yes. Otter is the person who did our cute little Phoenix logo. And it's awesome.
Right?
And has adorable art.
Okay, so the stream has reached its 1 hour point. That's about how long we go. And of course it is stream of consciousness, so... This wasn't scripted. We didn't do the best that we could have. This topic is super heavy and deserves a lot. Like, a lot. What we did was like, here's the floor. Here's where we did it. Here's where it needs to go. Okay? A lot more intelligent than we are. Someone a lot more intelligent than we are needs to cover this. Okay? I don't ever want anyone to think that I think I'm an expert. And again, we talked about stuff that we have no business talking about. So, like, if we said something wrong, please let us know so that we can become better educated. We both want to grow. That's awesome.
A lot of our, like, the Topic Tuesdays are more like, here's the thing. Here's what we know about the thing. So now you know the existence of the thing and might be curious about it.
The dare on Patreon is to dare me to do something during one of my streams. Like, hey, throw away your gun, or hey, try and play this next round without using your ASD key, your WASD keys. Just stupid little stuff like that. Nothing, like, massively intense.
Just goofy.
Yeah, just goofy. And most of my viewers are, like, teenagers and stuff. So if you come in being weird, we're gonna have some issues.
She is. I am not.
She is.
I'm a farmer.
Yeah, I used to be a farmer. But yeah, fun times. So yeah, we're gonna cut the stream here. If you want to support what I do in the Tran community, please check out my Patreon. In addition to that, if you would like to become involved in the Tran server, please message me on Discord. My user tag is I changed it. Brynhilder, number 9337. I know I'm gonna get spammed. That's okay.
It happens every time.
Literally happens every day. We have an entire thing on the server dedicated to people that send me stupid messages and that try to harass me, where we just sit there and make fun of them. I'm gonna make YouTubes about it once I get better at editing. So, like, I am cool with the ammo. Go ahead and send me harassment. It'll just become content. I love you all. Thank you, Unreal. I hope you have a wonderful and amazing rest of your day. If you haven't eaten or drunk anything,
Do so, please.
please do so.
Consume nutrients.
You are loved, you are amazing, and you are worth all the time and the effort. Please don't let anyone in the world tell you